Hello and welcome to another episode of Sex Talk with Natasha. This is Natasha Helfer Parker. So the topic tonight is going to be about dealing with problematic sexual behavior. So this has a lot to do with how we conceptualize what problematic behavior might look like. A lot of people in our current culture call these types of issues sexual addiction, unwanted sexual behavior, problematic sexual behavior. There's a lot of names that people kind of talk about in regards to this issue. And it's, again, a very common complaint that comes and shows up in my office. So whether it's the individual themselves who is concerned about their behavior, or maybe it's a spouse or partner who is concerned about their partner's behavior. So we are going to offer 5 kind of tips and strategies. Why is the first tip or strategy so important? And that's because I'm going to spend a lot of time in helping people figure out whether or not we should be assessing your sexuality or your behavior as problematic to begin with. We're going to talk a lot about the addictions model because it's very prominent in our current cultural climate, especially here in the United States. And we're going to talk about how to understand what that model offers, why, in my opinion, it's lacking, and also why it's actually can be more harmful than helpful in treating many of the problems that arise that are legitimate. I think a lot of times people hear me say something like, oh, the addictions model isn't necessarily effective, or the way that we should conceptualize the problem, and they automatically kind of indirectly hear me saying, well, then there is no problem, or I should just be okay with whatever behavior either I am doing or my partner is doing. And so you can understand how, especially in partners, from a partner's perspective, that can feel very minimizing and problematic. So that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there definitely are problems with sexual behavior. Most human behavior, whether it's eating, shopping, finances, gambling, parenting, you name it, we can have problems with any type of human behavior. And so when there are problems, we want to make sure that we're assessing the problem correctly and that we are matching that problem with effective treatment. So for me, diagnosis, assessment, the verbiage around this, and the models that we use are a very important aspect of treating problematic sexual behavior in effective ways that will actually benefit you either individually or relationally, and not inadvertently cause more problems or harm, which is what I've seen, unfortunately, on an ongoing basis from people who come to me after having, seen a kind of somebody who works more from an addictions modality. So that is what we're going to be addressing. We will talk about tip number 2, which will deal with the tension of our values and our sexual behavior, and how sometimes that's a conversation worth having when we feel like our behavior is out of control or problematic. We want to talk about tip number 3, which is dealing with possible underlying mental health conditions, which typically tend to be anxiety or trauma related, and how those might be playing a role in your sexual behavior. Tip number 4 will cover developing a diversity of coping mechanisms so that you're not relying on any one coping mechanism, especially if it's causing problems in your life. And then tip number 5 will be about visualizing what you want your adult relationship with your sexuality or with your partner's sexuality to look like, so that we're really taking an empowerment approach, a sex positive and health driven approach to your sexuality, instead of a diseased model towards your sexuality, which again is one of the many reasons we'll talk about tonight as to why that is not helpful. So again, I hope you'll join me. Hit on the link for a one-time purchase of the webinar. Another way that you can join me is to become a Patreon subscriber of Sex Talk with Natasha, which is what I highly recommend, because for the same price of one webinar, you can get a monthly subscription, which will offer you 3 to 5 webinars depending on the month that it kind of hits upon. It also offers you all of the other things that I offer on a fairly regular basis, almost daily, not quite, but probably about 3 to 5 times a week. I'm posting something, whether it's a homework assignment, a sexual tip, an article I've come across that I think might be useful for you, kind of sexual information, resources, recommendations. So there's lots of things. Plus we have usually a monthly giveaway, which by the way, Karina won last month's giveaway. So any Patreon is automatically included in a random selection of a giveaway, which is usually either a book or a sex toy or something that I feel is helpful. What else? So Sex Talk with Natasha is basically a comprehensive, sex positive, sexual education venue for adults, and I hope to help you reach your goals and your sexual potential. I come from the framing that sexuality is such an important part of our lives. It is an intricate part of who we are as individuals, and it obviously also affects our relationships, our most meaningful relationships often. And we can gain great health benefits, emotional health benefits, physical health benefits, relational health benefits. It can help us with our parenting of our own kids to be well sexually educated. So it's a topic that is typically still very taboo, still lots of misinformation that you can find unfortunately on the internet or even from other mental health professionals. I'm a certified sex therapist, which means that I did additional training in sexuality, which again is not something that is required for most mental health professions, well really for all mental health professions at the level that I've received training. And so it's a passion of mine, and I hope to share that with you in ways that will edify your life and your relationships and your sexuality. So consider joining us for this very important topic. Again, it's something that comes across in my office very often, and it hopefully will offer you some effective, research-based ways to deal with this problem in a way that's going to help and not hinder your own esteem, your own idea of your sexuality and your relationship. So with that, everybody have a good night, happy sex life, happy whatever, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.